I love these things that you've done. So I just want to thank you again for all the years you've been doing them. They're terrific. It's funny because I was talking to William and he was asking me what I was going to show. And I'm saying, well, it's a bit of a retrospective. But then we both laughed going, how can it be a retrospective? You've been doing this for a year and a half. Because AI hasn't been out that long.
Right.
And when this came out, I think my life changed completely to this day. So I saw a funny clip with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Everybody knows obviously who he is. And he was at a conference as a motivational speaker. And I think that's what he's been doing for most of his life now. And he's waxing poetic about his life, about his whole career. He was well, obviously other than a motivational speaker, he was, Mr. Olympia, I think for, I don't know how many times, 7 years in a row, something like that. He was governor of California. Can you hear me? There you go. So he was the governor of California. He was one of the biggest action stars on the planet. And so he's trying to send the message to this audience at this convention that you have to work your ass off if you want to do what you want to do in life. So everyone's listening, and then a young guy raises his hand and says, "But Arnold, how does this work?" He goes, "Well, there's 24 hours in a day, right? So 18, you got to work your ass off at whatever you want to do, and you got 6 hours to sleep." And so this young guy goes, 6 hours? I need at least 8 or 9 every day. He goes, "Sleep faster." And so I just love that quote, "Sleep faster." And for the last 2 years since AI came out, I absolutely have been sleeping faster. There's just no time. I mean, there's so much I want to do when I'm working in Midjourney, which is the name of the program. There's a lot of them out right now that do prompt, you type in what you want, and then you get hopefully extraordinary images. It might not happen in a second. It might take hours, but that's what's so extraordinary. So that left me with so many what ifs. Like when I saw that the program could actually do anything that I can imagine, I've got a lot of ideas, Frank, and they're all sitting in the bottom drawer all these years because there's no way to create them unless you have a program like this, which didn't exist. So to me, this is the closest thing to magic that I think I've ever seen.
But Glenn, just give a short little bio before that.
Oh, I'll get to that. I'll get to that. Sure.
Oh, you will. Okay.
So I was just saying that left me. Let's see. This is not working. Here we go. Because you could do absolutely anything you want, I have a million what ifs, loaded, ready to go. And so that's what I've been doing for the last couple of years. And so when I say that, a lot of the what ifs happen in the middle of the night when I'm half asleep, because that's where most of my ideas are coming from. And so I'm having conversations with myself. I don't know if that's voices in my head. Claudia, is that voices in my head? Thank you. And so I'll give you an example. So a couple of nights ago, I was wondering, I think we've all seen the movie Aliens from Ridley Scott. Like, those aliens are just absolutely beautiful. But what if they were French kissing? Just out of curiosity, like, what would that look like? So that was kind of fun to just create. Normally they're terrorizing the ship and killing everybody in sight, and now here they're kissing. So, or what about Bigfoot? No one's ever really seen a clean shot of him. So what if there was a clean shot, and now he's taken a wife and he has kids and he's living in the mountains and he's having a grand old life? And this is all all created out of these programs. What if there was a handheld device, a handheld camera that can shoot X-ray? I mean, maybe it exists. I'm not even sure, but wouldn't that be great for action shots and for dance? I mean, I just think that series would be absolutely stunning.
So do you find that your imagination has gone
haywire?
Okay. More than, I mean, like, you see a fundamental change in yourself?
100%, Frank. I'm not proud of this, but I'm up at like sometimes 3 or 4 in the morning because I can't sleep because there's all these ideas that are speaking.
That you didn't normally have.
I'd say some of them were older ideas that I brought them back to life, so to speak, because I've been in advertising. So you asked me what my background is. I've been in advertising as an art director and a creative director for too many years, decades, basically. And the amount of pieces that you produce are getting shorter and shorter because of timelines and finances and all that. So you might just produce. When I started, I was producing so much, I was overwhelming. You might produce 20 pieces. Now you're lucky if you get 2 or 3, which that leaves all your ideas on the table, or you have to shelve them, or you throw them away. It's hard to reuse them. But now with this program, that's fair game. Everything's fair game. So you could do anything you want, pretty much. So, let's see that. Oops. So here's an example of a scene in the middle of the night in my mind, and the menu changes daily, right? And so all these images, for example, are speaking to me, trying to vie for my attention as to what I'm going to work on. when I wake up, so to speak. And so sometimes I'll just get up and actually go to the computer, or I'll just write it down and see if it makes sense the next morning. So I'm not sure why, but LinkedIn has become one of the platforms of choice to show off AI. So anyone who's experimenting with it is posting work, and the community has really grown. It's enormous, and it's a lovely group of people. I mean, everyone. I wouldn't have thought that everyone is happy to share how they're doing their things, and they're complimenting each other, and they're encouraging each other, and they're absolutely pushing each other. I mean, I can't even keep up with it. I mean, people are posting daily, really beautiful work. The same like 100 people or so. And there's endless amounts of podcasts that people are on. I've been invited to a few, and that's always kind of fun. It was funny. One of them, I was recognized. I didn't even know they knew me. These two young guys said, "Hey, that's Glenn Batkin on listening as well," because you could see all the names on the sidebar. And they said, "Do you want to come live and chat with us?" I go, "Sure." You know what I mean? So that's happening a lot. And so everyone's sharing work together and sharing tips and tricks and how they're doing stuff. And there's so many books being written now by new people who've never written books on the subject. So as an ad guy and as a creative director, art director, I noticed that everyone was doing one-offs, meaning one single image and then moving on to the next image, and the next day do another image, or a few days later. And that didn't really interest me as being in advertising. I go, why don't I just create campaigns for myself that I'm making up? And whether anything happens to them, it's hard to say. But it's just, that's how my brain works, because I've been doing ad work, and I don't think in single images. You're thinking in multiple media, you're thinking in stories and the like. So I'm going to pull some of the ones that I pulled off of LinkedIn and share a handful. I probably brought too many. Franks to stop me whenever it's getting too long. But this is probably one of the ones that was maybe the most fun, and it's for anti-fur, right? So just to level set, there's about 100 million. I think it's more like 1 billion rabbits, but I think there's 100 million animals that are killed each year for fashion. So the thought that I had in my head at the time was, well, fur looks best only on its original owner, not on anybody else. So I sat down, with the program. This is early in the program when it was far more difficult. Now the fidelity has jumped light years. But a year and a half ago, it was really hard to work with. So I came up with this campaign of animals wearing their own fur, because no one else should be able to, and that was the whole point, right? So I'll just go through a few of these that I'll share. And so there's a misconception about, I think, AI, and that, oh, you just sit down and you type what you like, and then it comes out 60 seconds later and you're done. This took me 3 days to figure out, about a year and change ago. Now it's much faster. But then I couldn't figure out how to get the fur on the animal that looked authentic and looked beautiful.
Right. Is there a real difference between someone like yourself, who's a creative director working in the ad space, or then an artist, a pure photographer or a pure illustrator, or, do you see a difference in that?
The only difference that I can see is that I'm going for ideas and not necessarily for the final execution, because some of this could be just proof of concept. And that's fine with me. It's not perfect. Like, people have said, hey, I really like what you did, but why don't you fix this or that? I go, this isn't finished work. This is conceptual work, right? So it's not really necessary that it's that final. So what happened next, I found fascinating. So because this was, let's say, a year and a half ago, and AI, I had only been doing it like 2 months or so. I posted it on LinkedIn and got a few hundred people, impressions. And I go, oh, that's cool. That's nice. And then a few days later, a few thousand. And I go, oh, okay. I mean, animals, Deb, you said it. I love animals as you do, for maybe different, probably not different reasons, but it's just universal. So those thousands the next day turned into 10,000, and then 100,000 impressions, and then a few 100,000. I go, wait a minute, this is really resonating with the world. This isn't just the United States. I was getting emails from all over the planet asking me about this, this series. And then when it hit almost 1,600,000, I was like, wow. And then 2 days later, I was like, okay, it doesn't mean anything to me. 500, 600, 1 million. I don't know what life is it going to change. Then I thought, it's a shame and a waste if someone doesn't use this, that can use this, like a company that's an anti-fur company, animal welfare. So I went back onto LinkedIn and I reached out to a dozen companies that are anti-fur, that's their mission. 2 days later, I got 3 responses immediately. We all want it. And I said, let me make this clear. This is a one-time offer. I'm donating it. I'll sign the paperwork that say you have the rights, to use it. I'm not interested in making any money on this, but it's first come, first serve. So the three companies, we had traded endless emails and phone calls. 2 weeks went by, a month went by, I got a little disheartened, but I didn't want to give up. So I went back to LinkedIn and I found a woman out of Paris who's running a coalition, an anti-fur coalition, which means there were 15 companies within her organization around the world that do exactly the same thing, and she guides them. So I sent what I just showed you and a few others to her, and a note saying, this is why you don't know me, this is who I am. I don't know if you've seen this. I'd love to donate it to your organization, because this is exactly what you do. You're trying to stop animals from being slaughtered. She called back within 20 minutes. Now, this is like at midnight. She goes, I love these. I've been posting these on my own social before you even sent the email. I go, really? Cool. She goes, I have to have this. I go, okay, it's yours.
And what held the other companies back from pulling the trigger?
The usual stuff, Frank, where people, well, we have a board, we have to show it to our board. And once they see it, I go, guys, there's no board here. It's just, it's yours if you want it, if it fits your mission statement. I'm not asking for money. But it is first come, first serve. And of course, when I ended up donating it to this company in Paris, this International Anti-Fur Coalition, the other three then responded saying, wait a minute. I thought we had it. I go, I thought I was, very, nicely, I thought I was clear. It was first come, first serve. She immediately said she wants it. She gets it. I'm really sorry, but that's not how this works. This is a one-time offer. So, but nevertheless, so the point of this long story is I'm sitting in a dark room on a computer, which I don't necessarily love, for hours on end, churning out tons of stuff, every other day. But the impact that this had changed everything for me, because it has meaning, right? It's not just me making art for art's sake. And so that's what I loved about it, right? And then I started leaning into doing more, and I'll show you some of those. I'm leaning into more pro bono work. And then when I happened to be on a podcast that they called me out and said, will you come on live and talk to us? They said, hey, everybody who doesn't know this guy, he's the pro bono guy. I'm like, really? You should know him, because if you don't know who he is, you should by now. I'm like, these guys are 20 years old. I go, how do they know who I am?
You're every rep's nightmare. The pro bono guy.
Well,
no,
it's causes, Frank, right?
It speaks about you, right? I mean, like, to be in that space.
Yeah.
Right. That you're that guy. I mean, that's a beautiful thing.
No, I don't. Honestly, I'll take that title anytime.
Yeah.
So again, as I said earlier, I'm just going to show you a handful of things. They're all over the place, because so is this technology, because it's so new.
Yeah, and give us a sense of how it works a little bit.
Okay, so let me read something that when I posted this was maybe a year and change ago as well. Again, it was really new, so it was kind of hard to navigate through it and make it do what you wanted to do without hours and hours and hours. And I understood why so many people gave up early. Now it's changed dramatically. It's actually quite easy, which then leads you to so on a podcast, there's a couple of people who said, so Glenn, this stuff is so easy now. So what's the big deal? I go, well, now it counts on you having a good idea and not just typing in what you want there and then it comes out. Let me see how you guys can think. And they go, and they were almost embarrassed, because they said, well, anyone can do this. I go, really? Tee it up with me and show me the ideas that are behind it, not just typing out words that make images just, for no reason. So that kind of turned their heads for a minute, which I was glad to, so again, been doing this for about 2 years. A year and a half ago, I had this idea that there was, and I'll read what I put in the in LinkedIn as the text, just to explain what the concept was. And here's the part where I got a little bit in trouble. Rare photographic evidence of the 1941 robot army program established by President Roosevelt and Robert Oppenheimer during World War II. It was openly disbanded and replaced with the Manhattan Project. So, but then below that, I'm typing in hashtags that say digital art and Midjourney and AI art and all that stuff. So I didn't think it was going to confuse anybody, because it was straight. So the sad part was I got a whole host of emails from World War II veterans going, I want to see those pictures. And I go, what pictures? The photographs. Can you send me copies? I go, no, there aren't any photographs. This is all AI. It says AI art, AI artist. AI. They go, what's AI? And I'm like, oh boy. So one guy, we traded emails, probably 5 or 6 emails, because he kept saying, I always knew that this existed. I always knew there was a robot program. I just couldn't prove it. And you have it. You got to get me those photographs. I go, look, Jack, there aren't photographs. I don't know what to tell you. He goes, you know what? Now that I look at them, I realize they're not photographs. I go, really, Jack? How is that? He goes, well, if they were, they'd be dog-eared and they'd be a little bit yellowed. You're talking about photographs from the 40s. I go, but Jack, didn't I tell you that it was a mile below the earth, like it was below the White House in a sealed vault, and it was just opened? They'd be perfect. I knew it. You got to get me these photographs. You got to get me these photographs. And so I have to be careful with what I say and what I do and make it more clear. And then the next one, I didn't do that either because it was, you know, a year and a half ago or something like that. So let me just show you some of the photographs. And again, I was going for, you know, an older style and very contrasty look. There's nothing, so, okay, so let me back up. So I'm saying that there's a robot only program, and now I want to show a host of images that reflect what that might be. So almost like a journalist, any of you who would go in and say, let's cover this the way, you know, like photojournalism and cover. So now you see a guy working on a piece of robotics from the 40s. You know, you sort of see this vast space that they're working in. You know, I kind of love the scale. And so here's a shot when you ask me, how does this work? You can't just type in, show me some pictures of a robot program. You're not going to get anything. You have to be hyper specific about what you want, the type of robot, the scale, the smoke, how many people in the room, the angles. So really, and I thought about this on the way over here, I go, but this room should be some of the best people who ever use this program because you know lenses, you know color, you know all of that stuff, you know, and you can keep changing it every single time. Where the average person, I don't think is putting in any of that, frankly. I don't think they're putting the film stock, they're not putting the lens, the lighting, the composition. So this group, if they were interested, would be better than anybody. Because it would be hyper specific to what you're looking for, not just a random thing. So if I type in clown, I don't know what I'm going to get. It'll be whatever the computer will thinks a clown is. But if I talk about the hair and the clothes and the expression and where are they? Are they a scary clown? Are they a fun clown? And all you have to go. It's poetic writing, is what I've determined at this point, having worked on it for a few years. So in my mind, I'm saying, okay, here are the workers that work at this factory that are building the robots. You know, here's a couple of these guys working on a smaller version of it. Perhaps I show details the way you might if you were going in and covering this thing as an editorial photographer.
And how long does it take to get that image back? I mean, you know, for you to put in your initial input.
I understand the question. For me, it's hours and days because I don't get exactly what I want. So I have to keep changing the prompt, which is basically you're typing in the text and subtle changes it completely. So when I did the rabbits with fur and the animals with fur, the first 2 days, it looked horrible. There was nothing to it. So I kind of gave up. And then another day, you know, maybe a couple of days later, let me try that again. Completely a mess.
But there's like the difference between being a creative director photographer than just somebody who's using the technology.
Well, I think so, but I'm a little biased.
No, but it's all in the nuance, isn't it?
It's all nuance, Frank, and it's gotten more nuanced than ever.
Are you doing everything with prompts, or do you get an image and then pull it into Photoshop and?
For me, I always go back into Photoshop after I get them out of Midjourney, which is the program's name. So I'm always using Photoshop, and there's another app that's called Kriya that allows it to get sharper. You know, if that's what you want, you know.
You go back and forth, you know?
No, once it spits it out, it's out. You can't go back in. So you can go back and reprompt something, but the beauty and the curse of this thing is if I take the exact same prompt and put it back in a day later, you're not going to get the same image at all. You'll get something completely different because the algorithms of these programs are taking into account millions of people working on stuff, not necessarily robots, but it's taking that into account. And so it's going to put something else. So you kind of have to stay with what you're working on if you want continuity, that I found. So if you let go for a week, you may not be able to get it back.
And when you say stay, meaning.
I mean, sit at a computer and muscle through it.
Like for the next half hour, 2 hours.
Or 5 hours or 12 hours, right? I mean, honestly, you know, you got to stick with it if you want to. Again, I'm not working for anybody, so I've worked on more stuff that I don't have than I have because I just give up on it. I go, you know, this doesn't work. Let me go on to another idea. I have enough of them, you know, so I'll just let it go.
And where does curiosity get you?
Everything.
No, but
You mean my personal curiosity or just life in life?
no, curiosity in general. You know, I want to get it better. I want to get it better. Does that end up being more frustrating? You know, like, what does it take for you to say, I gotta walk away from this one?
if if it looks like there's no hope in it, like I'm grateful that I didn't give up on the fur animals. Because ultimately it's actually helping these 15 companies around the world like they've never had. So I'm grateful that I didn't give up for the reasons you'd understand. But I've given up on probably 75% of my work and I go, I don't know what the answer is, so let me move on. Because it's not for a real project, it's just for me, kind of waxing poetic visually, so.
Well, Glenn, just an idea with the workflow. So you use the AI program until you get a file, an image file that you're more or less happy with. And then you tweak it in Photoshop.
Most people are doing that, yes. And now there are other programs being made because since AI has existed for a few years and they're making a fortune, because there's, now there's a whole video component to all this. And there are, like I said, the size of the images aren't that big, but with all these programs now I can make 5-foot prints if I wanted to,
What's the program you use or will you get to that later?
It's called Mid-Journey, like as if you were in the middle of a journey, Mid-Journey. That to me, I think is the premier one right now because everyone loves the fidelity. They're coming out almost every month, new ones to go up against it, and no one's really beaten it yet. But there are terrific other programs. So Mid-Journey is a subscription-based app where DALL-E and some others are free, and I use that 5% of the time. So if you want to get your feet wet, and I suggest you do, because this is going to, I would go to DALL-E because it's free right now. So DALLE. So it's not near. I don't think it's nearly as good, but it's a great way. It's a great entree into this thing.
So, thinking about why the rabbits at the feline are so you can't unsee them. And it occurred to me that terms from the modern theater of Bertolt Brecht, alienation, apply here. So when there's a theater performance and then somebody talks to the audience, that breaks the image, and that's referred to as alienation. But what you are doing is kind of circular alienation. Because you have a rabbit, we think we know what a rabbit looks like, then you put the foot on it, and it's still a rabbit. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on why these images are so unforgettable.
Well, first I'm going to say thank you. I mean, how can I not? That's nice praise. I'm working as hard as I can to try to come up with images that either I haven't seen or if I have a twist. And that is maybe 25% of the other 75% kind of gets tossed away or just just put onto drives that I'll likely never go back to. So I'm working with everything I can think of to come up with ideas that stop people.
So Glenn, when you say you're working, that's really the verbiage that you're putting into the program.
No, first I would say I sit down and try to think of concepts. So think of this as like a camera.
Better and better to what you want it to be visual.
It's getting easier, if that's your question. It is getting, not because I'm getting used to it, because the program is changing. It's changing every 3 or 4 months, and then every 2 months, and then every 1 month. I can't even keep up with it. I literally get headaches about it because it's changing almost every week. And when I mean change, if you miss the change, it would affect everything you're doing from that point on. It's not a subtle little thing like, hey, there's a new button that you do. I mean, it's huge shifts in how you use it, at least for me, how you use the program. And if you miss it, you miss it. So there's a lot of FOMO going on, that fear of missing out thing. And so it's tiring to try to have to log on every day to see what the new change has been. If that's like saying to you guys, you know your camera really well. Oh, by the way, the buttons are going to be in a whole different places and 3 of them are not going to work. And then you're going to have to ship, and that film stock, that's out. This is the new one. And you got to go, okay. And then you start using that. And then 3 weeks later, everything we told you, scrap it. Now
You
that,
can't go back.
no, not really. No, sorry, I take that back. You can't go back. But they slowly are removing some of those older versions. And when you say go back, I'm calling them version, V4, V2, V4, V5, V6, that kind of thing. They're keeping some of them and people still go backward a little bit, but the fidelity has gotten so good now that you kind of don't want to go back, if that makes sense.
So when you're prompting, are you prompting using a single string of words, or are you currently using sentences? Because I know when it first came out, you had to use a very specific set of words separated in certain ways in order to get it to generate it. And it's supposed to have gotten easier in that way too, is that?
That's a fact. So when I first started, almost 2 years ago, I found it unnerving because it didn't even make sense. It was truncated sentences, the way you rearrange them, the verbs and adjectives, were a mess. I would say now, it's if you and I are having a conversation and I hired you and I'm like, hey, Jim, let me tell you about this job I want, this is what I'm looking for. It would be the way we're talking right now. Now, the more poetic and the better writer you are, oh, that's going to help. And so the better imagination you have, and as I said earlier, photographers should be better than anybody because you can literally put in even a camera that's 100 years old. You could put that brand in, the film stock, the lens, the angle, the sun, the time of year, the lighting. The lighting is at six, long shadows or whatever it is that you're looking for, or studio lighting. I don't see a lot of people doing that, but when you do that, you get it. It nails it because you're being hyper literal.
So it's a combination of the photography piece, but also your vocabulary. I mean,
Yes,
a writer,
but here's
a writer working with a photographer could really do magical things.
that's what I've been telling everybody. Photographers should get together with art directors and writers and work on something because you all have different disciplines and different ways of looking at it. And the combination may yield extraordinary things, at least in concept. But to answer your question, Jeremy, one little addition to that, ChatGPT, and I hope people have heard of that. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm just saying, I know a lot of people just not following it. What I do a lot of times is because that's gotten so sophisticated, I actually talk to it about the prompts that I'm trying to do. And it helps you because it has a vocabulary of the entire English language and every book that's ever been written, more or less. So if you did we lose it? So you can, lately I've tried that where I'll describe exactly what I want, not necessarily in flowery language, but here's the intent, here's the concept behind it. I talk to it like I'd be talking to you. I go, here's an idea I have. What do you think of that? And it would say,
Are you asking it to write you the prompt when you ask it?
no, because I tell it what I'm looking for. You tell it, help me correct this prompt, is what I'm asking.
Okay.
Like, I'm gonna write all these things. I'll do bullet points and I'll say, this is what I want. This is like the overarching concept, right?
Right.
And I'll show you something next. See if that's working. Where it got angry at me for what I'm about to show you. And I'm like, so I would talk to it, and it's more fun for me than anything. I would talk to it like, go fuck yourself. I told you to tell me what just make believe. Well, this is really against religion and other things. I go, I'm not anti-religious. I'm not doing anything against it. Think of this as a metaphor, as a concept, right? So I'm calling this a righteous ride. And then one night I was thinking, I'm Jewish, but I don't know why Jesus came into a dream. You know how dreams work. They don't have to make sense. And I'm like, what if Jesus could serve? Like, wouldn't that be cool? Right? And so when I first brought this idea to ChatGPT, not Midjourney, and they said, yeah, you might want to be a little sensitive. I go, no, I'm talking about getting a Renaissance painter to paint this. This is not disparaging. This is like, I want it to be as beautiful as if it really happened. So I'll just read this last one. And this almost sounds like a news report, but I made up something called AI News. There isn't any AI News. So it shouldn't have fooled anybody, but it did. Today in AI News, a groundbreaking discovery has been made in the Metropolitan Museum archives. An unmarked crate was found to contain a remarkable collection of 7 paintings from the celebrated Italian master Antonello Messina, featuring captivating depictions of Jesus surfing. The paintings challenge the conventional view that surfing was invented in the 18th century. The museum is now preparing to showcase these works in an upcoming exhibition scheduled for late 2024. So again, I put all my hashtags, digital art, imagine, all that kind of stuff. I got more emails saying, we're going to that show. And I go, what show? I go, the Jesus surfing show. I go, there is no Jesus surfing. I go, you're an art director. You know that I'm writing AI below. There's 20 hashtags that say digital art, artificial intelligence. And I go, did you not read that part? I kind of skimmed it. I missed that part. And so I got 20 emails saying, you got to send me the article on this. I can't wait for the show. And I'm like, there is no show. There is no Robert Armour program. So then I realized I got to stop doing it. I got to stop doing it.
But you have a list of what you smoke before you were.
Uh,
Copy of that list.
so let me just show you a few.
That's good.
So when you see something like this, you have to factor in, I want a triptych, you know, I want him centered, I want him on a white, on a board like that with a halo, he's wearing black, you know, you gotta go into all those details or the computer will do it. And it's very unlikely that you're gonna like what you see. But I really wanted it aged. So that's why people were fooled. They go, but this looks just like it would have if it was in the 14th century or whatever it was. I go, I know, that's the point, right? And he was like, "God, fathers."
So it's fun to have fun with.
It's mind-bendingly fun, but frustratingly the same, right? Because if it was that easy and it came out like every, you know, in
What did these take you?
days to get to what I truly wanted to get out of it. Now, not I don't know if everyone else is spending days, but not that it matters to me, but it, but the more beautiful, you know, if you want this authenticity, I have to do research. So I'm actually cutting and pasting from, you know, from different museums and from history books and all that stuff. I'm not writing all this stuff because I don't know enough about it. You know, so I'm looking at people who were painters then, who might have painted Jesus and scenes of that nature.
So it really feels like the collaboration piece, like there, I mean, being with an art historian.
Would be extraordinary. Being with a technician that makes robots would be extraordinary. You know, you name it. Being a guy who's been a cowboy his whole life and you want to show cowboy life, if you were interviewing them and you took fantastic notes with a writer, I think you get work that looks like nobody else's work. You know, so I don't just sit there and just knock stuff out. I have to do a little bit of work behind all this stuff.
So do you think ad agencies and movie productions are going to get more into that collaboration space where you have an expert on Renaissance art, cowboy lifestyle?
I do, yeah.
I mean, that's the way to go to get it as authentic as you can.
I'm working. A little technical AI difficulty.
Yeah.
That's Deb, let's see. Well, while we're waiting, if there's any other questions, there we go. Let's see. Still doesn't seem to be working. Hold on. There it goes. So yeah, I know, like I said, I've met so many people through these groups, you know, on LinkedIn. And I see what they're posting because they share everything. Like everyone is an open book, which I think is really wonderful. And they don't go into almost any detail. It's a half a sentence. And I'm like, wow, for me, I'm like doing all this, you know, kind of deep research to see how do I get it more authentic to what I absolutely want, not the computer's version of what I want. It's very easy to type something in. And like I said, type in a clown, you'll get a million clowns, but is it exactly the things you want? Really unlikely. Again, I think people were noting that maybe this is the PSA guy, you know, the pro bono guy. So I had a thought, I'm calling it a cry for help. So I'll just read this through this. Across the world, low-income communities struggle for safe, affordable shelter. Right? So these are paintings on the side of dilapidated buildings. And, you know, I think of Williams in the room when we were in India together. I mean, I was almost in tears seeing how poor people live, you know, in the conditions and the lack of sanitation and everything else. So I thought, well, what if I was able to get, pie in the sky concept, what if I was able to get the best street artists in the world over a course of a month to paint people yelling and screaming for help on buildings around the planet? Keep going. Is it still working? Keep going. Sure. So you can kind of see, you know, what I've done here, you know, on these buildings that are being broken down. I don't think AI wants me to be showing this work.
Well, we do. If I may ask whenever you're ready.
Cool.
Yeah, you've shown us your creativity, which I think is wonderful, and more of like the technical way of getting these images. But do you worry about, like, I can see this being used, and I know creative directors and art directors use this as more of a mood board to show their photographers. But to be honest, I'm a photojournalist and also I used to code. So I kind of know a little bit of how this works, but do you worry that some of these images might be released without context of what they are? like, with the way it's.
Well, it wouldn't be for me, but I understand. I understand your question, and it wouldn't be for me, but
We talk more about like, and also these can, like, if they're fully AI and they're not transformed in any way, you can't really copyright them. So how do you see, like, this is not the question for you per se, but like in general, how do you see this? Other than for internal use, where can this go, other than like for fun or for increased productivity?
it's a great question, and I'm not really sure. I think because if I'm creating it, it can be used for fine art, certainly. And if anyone doesn't know, Bruce Byers has opened up a beautiful new gallery and is showing some of my work with his work. And that's been, thank you, Bruce. Called the Hill Street Gallery. You should look it up.
A related question, as far as I know, when you're using any of the AI image generators, it ends up being public, right? You can put in the greatest prompts, and then it puts up something, and then everyone sees that image.
Yeah, that's true.
How do you deal with now, anybody else can use that image that you worked on for 12 hours to further on?
So when I did the animals with the fur, I got a host of people doing their version of it that was really close. And they were like, what do you think? Isn't this great? I almost came so close to you. It's not quite as good as yours, but what do you think? I go, I think you should think of your own ideas, frankly. You know, I mean, like what are you copying? I mean, wasn't that rude about it,
They can even use the actual images that you made, right? There's no real.
but I mean, I guess they could, but where would they get a high-res version? So like recently a guy was asking me, how big can your files be? You know, when I come out and, he's asking me endless questions. I go, what's your question exactly? This is like the fifth question about size stuff. I go, if you want one of these, we can talk about it, but I have programs that can blow these things up to 5-6 feet. He goes, no, I'm not looking for anything. I'm just so curious about it. So yes, so to answer your question, online, anything can be stolen. But then honestly, can I steal anybody's photograph now? Unless you see it, you can go after me, but you can, but
Well,
no, that's not true. That's pixels, not bits and pieces. Let's be really clear. Now, and I have empathy for this whole thing because it's, it was a bone of contention when it first came out and I was using it and had a long, heavy discussion with our buddy Sandro, whoever, for those that know him, and he was furious with me, And I said, what is it that you're furious about? None of these things I'm using. I'm just showing off some thoughts that I have because you're taking away our jobs. I go, no, these are swipe boards, basically. I would be hiring you to shoot this. But if I can convince clients the fidelity is so high and the concept is so obvious and so incredible, I can sell it faster and we can get off and start shooting stuff because I trust you, Glenn, but I don't trust a lot of other creatives that are just going to sidestep us and do that. So, but to be clear, there's billions of pixels. It's not taking it didn't take the whole rabbit and then take a fur coat and then apply it. There's no way to identify that. Like there must be a billion rabbits on, online, and it breaks it down to literally almost microscopic pixels. So
What are your thoughts on the Toys R Us thing right
you'd have to see it. So maybe we're gonna have to table that. Yeah, we're gonna have to table that. Look, this whole thing is really complicated at the moment. And again, for those that know me, I love photography and I love art. The last thing I want to do is hurt anybody and take any money away from anybody. I'm using this. Look, I've been an art director for 30 years. This is a gift like I've never seen in my life because I can't tell you how many ideas we've never shown to clients because we couldn't figure out how to show them the intention and what the idea was. And so we'd scrap it and go, let's look at what we have. We got 12 ideas. We can't do those 3 of yours because they're too complicated to try to show them in concept. We're going to move on to the simple ones. I mean, I heard that my whole life. And now I'm going back and going, there's nothing I can't make. So therefore so here, for example, these aren't meant to be finished pieces. This is to show a concept that what if I were able to get the greatest street artist in the world in the same month to paint indigenous people screaming for help and crying for help on these dilapidated buildings where there's no heat and no hot water and rats and all the rest of that. Wouldn't that blow up on social media and maybe get attention that it might not have because people are not being heard by the government? So I'm trying to give a voice to the voiceless in this case. So that's what this is about. This isn't art. This is just a concept that I happen to think is kind of interesting. If that was ever doable, I mean, I can't tell you how many emails I got going, you got to do this. I go, do you want to help? No, I just think you should do it. I go, all right, well, then help if you think it's that interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you create an interesting situation / problem, is that you're coming with ideas. Right, and then the idea to be realized becomes the issue.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
In a creative way, because your idea, I mean, it's a brilliant in its simplicity. These people screaming, help me in this space,
Right.
but it's so much about the idea.
But that's what I do for a living.
Right.
As opposed to executing cool stuff for cool sake. I'm not interested in that so much.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, if you want to, I see people doing, like sexy girl robots and stuff. I go, okay. To what end? Like, why are you doing that? Cool cars, and other things. Like, give me a reason, any reason. And not a lot of people are doing that. And so, I was humbled by another podcast that said, why is your stuff differently than everyone else's? I go, you tell me, I don't know why. I go, there seems to be a concept behind this stuff. It's not just stuff. I go, thanks. That's what I'm going for. So.
And so, do you know contemporaries who are doing, in the same space as you?
Well, you have to use it now. Clients are asking for it and don't even know why they're asking for it. So I've been in meetings where, Glenn, can you get on the phone? You know more about this stuff than probably anybody in the room. I go, sure. And I go, I introduce myself and they'd say, we want to see AI in the next creative presentation. I go, absolutely. I'll show you how I can do it right now in front of you. I go, can I ask you why? Just because it's the latest thing. I mean, we want to see it. And I go, but there should be a better reason than just the latest camera, the latest this.
So do you think you're forcing clients, other creatives to be smarter, to work harder, to come up with an idea?
I hope so. I think most of AI is just smoke and mirrors because there isn't ideas behind a lot of it. It's just, like I said, it's cool stuff that's either, antiquated stuff that's cool from the past or futuristic stuff. There's just millions of pictures like that banging out daily on social, which it's wallpaper to me.
But so a finished piece, I mean, the idea, we get the idea, but a finished piece of a street artist making that painting on wall would not look as clean and as perfect as that, probably, right? Like a guy who does graffiti or a gal who does.
Probably, Frank, but let me
the idea.
let's make believe that you were the client for this concept. And I presented it to your company and the intention was, I want to get the best street artists in the world. If it takes a year to do, that's okay. And we're going to hire them each and every country to do this. If I didn't have this to show you, I don't know if the impact would be the same. You can disagree with me, but I think this is really good swipe.
Oh, it's a great swipe.
You know,
I'm saying the final product from an actual artist doing that painting wouldn't be as clean and perfect as this, just because. I guess.
You might be able to-
There's some guys that can do.
Yeah.
You probably haven't seen it.
Make things a little bit fun, since you know the technology so well, is it something you've been waiting for to be implemented in the tools that you're using?
So the big thing, and I barely touched it, is video. It's mind-bendingly beautiful. And I've seen, people are going to be doing full films in a minute that are just as good as any film. Not saying conceptually, I just mean the execution of the film. That's where everything is heading. I mean, and I've seen beta tests where I'm fooled that it's not real film. I don't know how it's possible, but it's the same technology. You type in a script. Again, you can work with ChatGPT and write a whole script in 3 minutes, as long as it's a good idea or not.
But they still can't get the text stripes though, and the fingers and the arms, from what I've seen.
Uh,
It seems to be like.
there- there's
they
a-
go back into Photoshop and then-
There's new tricks. I'd have to sit with you and tell you. They're coming up with new ways where you can go back into something which has the form fingers. You can marquee something and then type in and make these fingers absolutely perfect. I want 5 fingers, not 6. I don't want to do it like that. And so they're working on that like every minute. But really quick on this one, Frank. So a friend of ours, Mark Friedman, who's a fantastic creative director, a year and a half ago, he saw this and he wrote to me and said, I absolutely love this, Glenn. But with just a hint of snark, was saying, well, what'd you do? What'd you do on this thing? Like, they're beautiful. What part of this was you? I go,
This is Mark.
yeah, I go, well, let's talk about it, Mark. We're both art directors, creative directors. I had to sit down and think of it, right? I had to think of the locations, the expressions, the cast, the illustration style, the lighting, and all that. And then he kind of goes, I got it. I go, how different is this than any other project? It's the same thing. It's just you're happening to see the fidelity of the very high concept boards. But other than that, there's no difference than what we've been doing for 30 years. And then he goes, I get it now. I thought you just put it in and just made it all. I go, no way, this took me days and days to do these, get these faces, the different ethnic diversity.
You're almost on a crusade teaching us,
Yeah, maybe.
how it's done. No, it is.
Maybe.
So, I
So,
mean, I look at those completely different.
so here's a case in point where I had this thought. Again, these are just thoughts that I'm sharing with the world, whether people like them or not like them. I mean, that's important. I'm hoping that some of the pro bono work is picked up, that people go, I really love that. And so far, I've donated 2 campaigns to the world. And that makes me happy, than me just sitting in a dark room, in your underwear and at 4 a.m, knocking stuff out. You know what I'm saying?
Don't need all the details.
It's all about the details, frankly. So this is something Bruce and I talked about. I call this Last Call, and it's an imaginary documentary series which captures the soul of 12 local bars worldwide, emphasizing the friendships and the psychological support they offer. Right? I think everyone can agree there are certain local bars that have that, their extended families, right? 12 different places on the planet. I've been to Cuba a couple of times with Bruce, and so it was easy for me to go, let me do Cuba, because I know the feeling and the colors and the lighting and the look and the patina and the smells. And so that makes it easier for me than to a place I hadn't been. You can't deny the cars that are absolutely stunning, from the 50s. There's the personalities, the people that are there. Dance is huge. So I had to create all these color palettes that are very familiar to me, to Cuba. Wrong, Bruce?
Right on.
I know, romance, there's dominoes and cards that they're always playing. Everyone's smoking, especially there's an older group of women that are always out in the streets wanting to be photographed. It's somebody, oh, you've been there? Yeah. There's just wonderful character studies, a detail about the deeper part of the story about guns. I mean, they're Gary. I just love this one as the introspection of a woman looking into the mirror in the ladies' room. Music is a huge component of Cuba. You can't not go by any place at night and not hear it. There could be somebody who's passed away that they're sharing because everyone's become family in the bars. There's loneliness that you're trying to convey. There's mojitos, Bruce. We had way too many of those. Back to the music again, and in the cars and the food.
So is there an appreciation on the other side, on the client side, for the technology and the time that it takes to put this together?
I think I don't know if clients care how long or short it takes you to do something, but if it helps them understand your concept, that's all that matters. And so for me and art directors that are taking this seriously, and I think they all are now, if I can get closer to the concept, it's an easier sell. I can't tell you how many rounds, especially in healthcare, you can go 20 rounds of creative, which means hundreds and hundreds of concepts. And I think half of those are because they can't see it. And that's not their job. They're crunching numbers and they're doing business and they're selling drugs or whatever they're doing. So if you can get really close, it's a faster sell. And it beats the other ones that don't use AI in the same room. It's unfortunate because sometimes it's not the best idea. It's the finish is so high. When I look at this stuff, you guys can agree or disagree, it really gives you a tapestry of Cuban colors and then the lighting and the time of day. It's all at night. So if I show this to a film company that said, yeah, we want to do your film, where we're going to shoot films of local bars in 12 countries around the world, and we're going to capture, a night in the life of these things. Well, what do you have in mind? I go, this is what I have in mind. And I think it would help the directors and help everyone else say, we see it exactly. As opposed to swipe that and have to source from so many different places, and it's kind of a mess. Or you have to Photoshop the hell out of stuff, which is always a disaster most of the time.
So some things, when you program this, were the same.
Those Cuban,
Yeah.
75% of it's the same, and then you have to shift your emphasis to lips of an old, of an 80-year-old woman smoking the millionth cigarette that she smoked, or the table has a gun on it. But all the colors and the patina and the palette and the lighting and the cameras, if you know cameras, the time of day, the paint colors, the palettes, you keep those the same.
I think the issue that as photographers is that you see these things, you go, man, that's just so perfect. And why not use that instead of hiring someone? It's just there, it's already done. I mean, I think this is a good issue that I think, it's sort of like, like people you're just being replaced. I mean, I understand your perspective for sure, and it makes a huge amount of sense. But what I'm saying is if you see this, what's to stop you from just using that, not hiring somebody to do it? Not that it's your problem.
No, but it's a question that, William, I have to live with this question all the time. But I know for myself, I'm not doing that. And legally and theoretically, you're not supposed to use this stuff, but people are. So for example, in the fur concept, and I'll show you one other one, which happened to have animals. They honestly didn't care. And here's why. Glenn, do you really think the government's going to go after a company, that's trying to help animals from being slaughtered? I don't think so. And I agree with them. So they're willing to take the risk. They just don't care.
But don't you think our industry has to evolve into now writers, art directors, and photographers must collaborate?
Oh, you're missing one other person. The prompt engineers is what the term is. No, that's the term.
This is kind of what I don't, exactly.
Right, I mean, so it's almost like creating your own creative team where these 4 or 5 men and women will go to an ad agency, go to a client. We are your team to create. I do this, she does this, she does that, whatever it may be, and we're the best at doing it, like the animal work, right? That work, the cubicle work, this is our team, we do that. Come to us because we're better than the guys around the block.
So the short answer, absolutely, that's happening now.
I mean, that's what's gonna happen.
It's already happening.
And so the photographers are not out. The photographers are in, but they have to find themselves in a different space in order to thrive, in order to say.
I mean, it's William, there's no choice. I mean,
No, I agree,
I don't know what the answer is. It's unfair.
it's just, I also feel like I say, like saying before, it's sort of like everything's about money, always, and they've already spent money, somebody concepting all this and creating all this. Like I said before, it's done. Why hire someone? Why, it's already done.
A lot of companies are not hiring the photographers.
Yeah, exactly.
And William, I'm not happy about it because I love photographers and photography.
No, I
But-
maybe, I'm just.
I know you're not, but the trains, the trains left the station and
I mean, it's scary.
so I would say, I don't know if you know, a terrific photographer, his name is Eric Almas. He does a really stylish work. And, so a year ago, we had a lot of heart to hearts. He's like, I don't know, I love what you're doing, Glenn, help me. I go, help you do what exactly? He goes, how would I use it? And so what he did was he did a beautiful study of Art Deco backgrounds, and then he shot the women in front of it. And he's such a good compositor that he goes, I just saved myself $200,000. I'm not having to build that backdrop and get those cars and all those colors and the architecture. And I go, that's exactly how you should use it, because that's what you do anyway. You composite 30, 40 pieces together. It's no different. It's just you didn't happen to shoot that backdrop, but you did it, you blended it beautifully, and you just saved the client. Well, you're not saving the client any money, but you didn't have to put in 100K to build that set. So you only look better, and you could never have built it that beautiful anyway, because it was perfect. Do you know what I mean? It was like built in the prompt from that time period, not a replication, but so you're putting in the architects that might have built that and all that stuff. So you're a creative guy, Wayne, and I love your work. I think you have to figure out how to, and I'm happy to help you. You have to figure out how to use it if you want to stay relevant.
Yes.
Right? So I have a ton of stuff. Frank, I don't know how much time we have. I can rip through.
It's
So-
9 o'clock, so we gotta.
to wrap it up. I'll show the other animals that you can kind of see what this is for an improv group that I was working with that were curious about how to do something different. FIFA World Cup, I was thinking instead of using Nike shots, instead of using Nike and Adidas shots, why not have real fans dressed in authentic outfits for 2026 that's coming, where the game's going to be in a whole lot of countries. I thought that was kind of fun. This is a great film. This is the one I wanted to.
Have ideas, that difference.
And again, I'm not patting myself in the back, but I spend more time on the idea than I do where everyone else is just trying to grind through the best prompt to make you know, the Playboy robot, which and I'm not exaggerating, that's what, I don't know why that's a thing, but it's a thing. You know, men mostly. So a year passed from the fur campaign to now, this is recent, and I had another idea for animals. And the phrase is made homeless by humanity because of deforestation and global warming. Where animals are living is being destroyed, and they're literally becoming, in essence, homeless. So the thought I had was, why not make them look like they're homeless, the way humans are homeless?
So,
So
you know, that's an interesting thing. You just told us the idea. And like, what were we all thinking before you show us the images?
right. So this is probably one of my favorites. So I'll end the whole thing and I'll show you a few of the images that were in this campaign. We've all seen so much animal welfare campaigns. There's probably more than that than almost anything. And I don't know what's new anymore. I've seen thousands of them, and a lot of them are great. You know, and so to come up with a new one, and I hope this is original, I haven't seen it. You know, I was just really happy with, because I just think people can project humanity onto animals now, as opposed to seeing them in the wild without homes or whatever the case is. So to me, this is, you know, using concept perfectly. You know,
Do you find that, at least from your vantage point and your vision and your creativity, you're mostly in these types of categories?
that wasn't intentional, to be honest with you,
No,
Frank.
I know that it's not, but those are like, they're lending themselves more into that space versus the purely commercial space, unless you do something for Cuban rum.
Right.
That's bars, that's what I'm saying, but these are incredibly powerful.
I think part of it, Frank, is when I did the fur and a couple other things, and then I was on a couple of podcasts going, you guys should know, as I said earlier, you should know this guy. He's the pro bono guy. I am. Okay, I can do that. You know, why not? So I went to the fur company that's in Paris, and I said, have you seen these? And she says, I have. I love them. I want them. I go, you're anti-fur. This is about animals that have been, you know, hit by the problems, environmental issues. It doesn't work. She goes, I know, but I still love them. Can I have them? I go, no, I'm not calling you about that. I'm asking, do you have another company you think in the world that you're connected to that might use these? And she did. I mean, it's a group in Israel called Freedom for Animals. And that's all they do is help animals that are being hit by this. So this is running. So this is running now as a pro bono thing. And there's tons of other stuff. I don't want to, you know. Anyway. Well,